Welcome to World Prism. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In the complex world of global economics, tariffs stand out as one of the most powerful and often controversial tools that governments use to shape international trade. These policies can have far-reaching effects, influencing not just the flow of goods across borders, but also the everyday lives of millions of people. At its core, a tariff is a tax imposed on imported goods. By making foreign products more expensive, tariffs are designed to encourage consumers to buy domestically produced items instead. This approach aims to protect local industries from overseas competition, helping them to grow and maintain jobs within the country. However, while tariffs can benefit domestic producers, they often come at a cost to consumers. Higher prices on imported goods can lead to increased costs for everyday items, from electronics to groceries, affecting household budgets and overall economic well-being. Historically, the authority to set tariffs rested firmly with Congress, reflecting the importance of public debate and legislative oversight in shaping trade policy. Lawmakers would weigh the interests of various industries, regions, and the broader economy before making decisions that could impact the nation's trade relationships. Over the years, however, some of this power has gradually shifted to the executive branch. Presidents have gained more flexibility to respond quickly to changing global circumstances, such as economic crises or sudden threats to national security. This shift in authority has sparked ongoing debate and tension over who should control trade policy. When presidents act swiftly, especially in times of perceived emergency, critics worry that important decisions are being made without sufficient input from Congress or the public. Many argue that bypassing the traditional legislative process undermines transparency and accountability. They believe that robust public debate and congressional approval are essential to ensure that trade policies reflect the nation's best interests. The ongoing debate over presidential power in trade policy has real-world consequences. It affects businesses large and small, workers on factory floors, and consumers shopping for everyday goods. The stakes are high, as these decisions can shape the economic landscape for years to come. In recent years, actions taken by former President Trump have brought this constitutional question into sharp focus, intensifying the national conversation about who should ultimately control America's trade policy. On April 2, 2025, former President Donald Trump made headlines across the nation by declaring what he called Liberation Day. In a dramatic announcement, Trump addressed the country, promising to take bold action to protect American jobs and industries from what he described as years of unfair foreign competition and economic aggression. Using the rarely invoked International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, Trump signed an executive order imposing sweeping tariffs on a wide range of imported goods. This move marked one of the most significant uses of presidential emergency powers in recent history, targeting not just adversaries, but also key U.S. trading partners. The administration's broad strategy was designed to fundamentally reshape global commerce. By raising tariffs, Trump aimed to encourage companies to bring manufacturing back to the United States, strengthen the nation's industrial base, and reduce reliance on foreign supply chains. Supporters argued this would bolster national security and create new opportunities for American workers. The announcement sparked immediate and intense debate. Supporters saw the tariffs as a long-overdue response to what they viewed as decades of unfair trade practices by other countries. They rallied behind Trump, believing these measures would finally level the playing field for American businesses. Critics, however, warned that the sweeping tariffs represented a dangerous overreach of executive authority and could backfire on the U.S. economy. The IEEPA, a law typically reserved for imposing sanctions on hostile nations or addressing national security threats, was now being used in an unprecedented way against some of America's closest trading partners. This controversial application of the law sent shockwaves through diplomatic and economic circles worldwide. The Trump administration argued that the steady erosion of America's industrial base posed an extraordinary threat to the nation's security and prosperity. They insisted that urgent action was needed to reverse decades of decline in key industries like steel, automotive, and electronics, but the tariffs quickly caused economic shockwaves. Businesses across the country faced rising costs for imported materials and components, forcing some to raise prices or cut jobs. Many feared a wave of retaliatory tariffs from other countries, which could further disrupt global supply chains and hurt American exporters. This high-stakes move set the stage for a fierce legal and political battle over the limits of executive power. Lawsuits were filed almost immediately, challenging the president's authority to use emergency powers for economic policy on such a broad scale. The former president's expansive interpretation of the IEEPA faced strong opposition from state governments, business leaders, and legal scholars. As the nation braced for the fallout, the debate over Trump's emergency tariffs became a defining moment in the ongoing struggle over the balance of power in American government. When President Trump announced sweeping tariffs, the move sent shockwaves through the political and business communities. Almost immediately, a fierce legal battle began to take shape, as critics questioned the president's authority to impose such measures without congressional approval. The administration argued the tariffs were necessary to protect national interests, but opponents saw them as an unprecedented expansion of executive power. State governments, major corporations, and trade associations quickly joined forces, filing lawsuits that challenged the constitutionality of the tariffs. They argued that the president had overstepped his legal boundaries, and that such sweeping economic decisions should be made by Congress, not the executive branch. Their case rested on a fundamental principle. The Constitution clearly assigns the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations to Congress. By acting unilaterally, the administration, they claimed, was undermining the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. The plaintiffs also pointed to the real-world consequences of the tariffs. Across the country, businesses faced rising costs, layoffs, and even closures. Many small business owners testified about the devastating impact on their livelihoods, arguing that the economic harm was both immediate and severe. The legal fight escalated quickly, making its way through the lower courts before landing at the U.S. Court of Appeals. After careful deliberation, the court issued a landmark ruling against the administration, finding that the president had exceeded his statutory authority. The judges emphasized that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, was never intended to allow the president to bypass Congress's constitutional role in regulating trade. Their decision reaffirmed the importance of legislative oversight in matters of national economic policy. Refusing to back down, the administration appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, arguing that the tariffs were essential for national security and that the president needed broad authority to act swiftly in times of crisis. The Supreme Court's decision to hear the case drew intense public interest. News outlets camped outside the courthouse, and Americans across the country watched closely, aware that the outcome could reshape the balance of power in Washington for years to come. At its core, the legal battle was about more than just tariffs. It was a test of the limits of presidential authority, and a defining moment for the separation of powers in the United States. As the nation waited for the Supreme Court's verdict, the stakes could not have been higher. The decision would have lasting implications for how America's government balances power between its branches, and for the future of trade policy itself. On December 9, 2025, the Supreme Court ruled against Trump's tariffs under IEEPA. The decision reasserted congressional authority over trade and checked presidential power. The court emphasized the separation of powers, stating Congress controls taxation. Justices expressed concern over the broad interpretation of executive authority. The ruling was a bipartisan decision, focusing on constitutional structure, not politics. The court distinguished between targeted sanctions and broad economic policy making. A dissent argued for executive flexibility and national security, but the majority prevailed. The decision ended the Liberation Day tariffs, reinforcing legislative deliberation. The Supreme Court's decision to nullify the tariffs brought relief to businesses. Companies could receive refunds, potentially reinvesting in operations and hiring. Consumers might see lower prices as the tariff-induced cost pressure eases. The ruling restored stability for businesses reliant on international trade. However, some domestic manufacturers, like steel producers, faced renewed competition. The decision highlighted the complex effects of trade policy on different sectors. Congress now faces the challenge of supporting industries without broad tariffs. The debate over trade policy shifts to legislative action and compromise. America's farmers were hit hard by retaliatory tariffs from trading partners. Countries like China targeted U.S. agriculture, causing prices to plummet. The trade war led to falling incomes and rising debt for farmers. The administration provided a $12 billion aid package to offset losses. The Supreme Court ruling may reopen export markets, but aid funding is uncertain. Farmers hope for market recovery but face challenges without tariff revenue. The situation underscores the unintended consequences of trade policy. The future of American agriculture depends on stable trade relationships. The Supreme Court's decision reshapes U.S. trade policy and the economy. The focus now is on refunding tariffs and stabilizing businesses. Congress must lead in crafting a coherent trade strategy. Lawmakers face competing interests of manufacturers, farmers, and consumers. The ruling offers a chance to reset international trade relationships. The decision emphasizes the need for legislative debate on major economic policies. The balance between presidential power and congressional authority is reaffirmed. The future of U.S. trade policy lies in the hands of Congress and the American people.